Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes.
Hi, welcome to Moviecase episode, 4?
Yes.
We're going to be talking about Sherlock Holmes today. Hi, Thomas.
Hi, Nathan.
I would like to state for the record that we're not recording in a studio with professional equipment. We're recording on a computer in Thomas's house.
But we're professional people.
As much as we can be. I bring this point up just as a matter of record so that if you hear other voices, you can check off your list that it might either be Thomas's mother, Thomas's cousin Jenny, if it's a female voice, or if you hear a male voice, it could either be his dad or his brother.
Or an indication that you need to go see a psychiatrist.
That's only if they're hearing double the amount of voices that are already here. So anyway, barring you being crazy, that would be.
You need a big bar for that.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll drink to that. Speaking of bars.
Speaking of bars, looks like you got a drink in your hand.
Yes, a little Jack Daniels and Coke. Coca-Cola, that is. Anyway, we're not in recording studios where that basic disclaimer is, so in case you hear other voices other than ours, that's why. As you probably heard on the last one. So, since we're on the subject, Sherlock Holmes is our subject today. Sherlock Holmes started, a little preamble here, Sherlock Holmes started with books by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, or A. Conan Doyle, or A.C. Conan Doyle, depending on how you want to write it out. He accepts all of them. He's dead, so he's got no say in it. He did 4 novels and 256 short stories. Sherlock Holmes has voiced Jack the Ripper in a few books and a few times in the movies. He has been on the screen since the early 1900s, starting in about 1905 is the earliest one that I could find. So Sherlock Holmes has been on the screen since 1905. The most filmed thing is The Hound of the Baskervilles, most filmed novel of Holmes.
Do you know how many times it is, Nathan?
Well over a dozen, according to my notes here.
Wow.
So they've got that. There's numerous TV series that have been done. He's been currently updated to the current century in a show called Sherlock, which airs on the BBC and PBS in the US. He's been spoofed in movies like Without a Clue and The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother. He and The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes. In that movie, Christopher Lee plays Mycroft Holmes. He is the last living person who can lay claim to playing both Mycroft Holmes, who is Holmes' smarter brother, and Sherlock Holmes. So I want that noted for the record. Most notably, in 1939 to 1946, Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce made 14 movies together, 2 at 20th Century Fox, and then they switched to Universal in 1942, and 42 to 46 they appeared in the other 12. It, in the series, they also did a radio series from 1939 to 1946 with Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce called The New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Some of it was adaptations of Conan Doyle's already existing works. Others was mysteries written specifically for the radio by Dennis Green and Anthony Bulger, or the various other directors that they had for that show at the time. Nigel Bruce went on to do another season of the show from 1946 to 1947, with Tom Conway as Sherlock Holmes. For the radio work, Rathbone and Bruce got as much as $1,200 a week and as little as $300 a week.
Wow.
Rathbone and Bruce were the only non-comedy act to raise lots of money for war bonds besides Vincent Price as the Saint. So that should be noted for the record as well. Rathbone played Sherlock Holmes twice on television in the 50s, and he did a play in 1951 that was written by his wife, and it bombed. That was him playing Holmes. There's many documentaries about Holmes, including The Many Faces of Sherlock Holmes, which is hosted by Christopher Lee, as I said, one of the guys who played Holmes. Holmes has also been examined from the feminist perspective by Carol Nelson Douglas in a series of 8 novels and a novella, and by Laurie R. King in a series of 12 plus works. The origins of Sherlock Holmes, using Conan Doyle and Dr. Bell, which was the guy that he originally worked with, that became the basis for Sherlock Holmes. It was examined in 2 TV series, The Murder Rooms, The Mysteries of the Real Sherlock Holmes, 2000 and 2001, and The Dark Beginnings of Sherlock Holmes, 2003 to 2005. Nicholas Meyer has written 3 Sherlock Holmes, one of which is Sherlock Holmes vs. Jack the Ripper story, and House MD from 2004 to 2012 was inspired by Sherlock Holmes. You can see it exactly in the fact that Holmes lived at 221B Baker Street, so did House in the show. If you go back to some of the early episodes, you can see that. And Dr. Watson's name was Dr. John H. Watson, and Wilson's initials are the same as John H. Watson. It's James H. Wilson. So there's that stuff. The origins of Sherlock Holmes being a young man was looked at as part of the Rathbone and Bruce radio series, as part of a 1954-1958 BBC TV series that was filmed, oddly, in Canada. There was the youngest meeting of them was in Young Sherlock Holmes 1985, which had Steven Spielberg as a producer on it. So that's my overview of Holmes and Watson. Here you go, Thomas. Take a look at that. I'm going to have Thomas ask questions about Holmes and Watson, and then we'll debate the finer points of what we know from watching various Holmes and Watson things over the years, who we feel is better for playing the roles, etc. Any questions?
Yeah. Let's go straight to the feminist interpretation of Sherlock Holmes.
Okay, yeah, speak up so we can...
Oh, yeah. Let's go to the feminist interpretation of Sherlock Holmes.
Okay.
Would you advise, anybody who's been a Sherlock Holmes fan but hasn't read them to look into them, or is it strictly like for a female audience?
I think females would probably get more out of it, being as it is, again, the feminist perspective.
Yeah.
But I think that if you have enjoyed Sherlock Holmes, written from the male's perspective, i.e. Conan Doyle,
Right.
Or Nicholas Meyer, or any of those, that you might get a chuckle out of seeing the woman's interpretation of Holmes and what he could have been or is or whatever.
So does he like dating them and things like that?
Yeah, he gets married in both.
Wow.
And the thing that should be noted, though, is that in the Laurie R. King series, Beekeeper's Apprentice, Mary Russell books, she also takes a whack at the Catholic faith.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because she's Protestant.
Yeah.
So, or Presbyterian. So,
Yeah.
She studied theology in her schooling. And so there's a heavy dose of that in the second book, which is A Monstrous Regiment of Women. So if you feel like you're a Catholic and you don't want to see your faith taken out of context and analyzed to a degree that it is mind-numbingly bad, at least in my opinion, then I'd suggest you skip the second book and go on to the third. But
Okay.
That aside, it is worth a look.
Very cool. And are the Kindle books and stories like Mrs. Hudson's Case and Laurie R. King, Sherlock Holmes, and Beekeeping for Beginners, are they like shorter stories, or are they?
Yes. Mrs. Hudson's Case and Beekeeping for Beginners seem to be like deleted segments out of The Beekeeper's Apprentice.
Okay.
But the Laurie R. King's Sherlock Holmes is actually a series of intellectual lectures that she did, or somebody else did, to the Baker Street Irregular group in London, which is an annual convention for people who love Sherlock Holmes, and it's a whole society out there. And she presented a few times, so she's got those in there. She's got a couple of other people that she admired that presented there and there. So it's a scholarly analysis of Holmes, and it also explains the origins of the series that she wrote.
Very cool. And perhaps more contemporary also is, House MD, which is inspired by Sherlock Holmes, as you explained. Could you tell us a little more about that? Like, do you know in what way it was inspired? Like, is it through the screenwriters, the script writers, or?
The series creator, Bryan Singer, who you'll remember was the director of the good X-Men films, the first two.
Yeah.
He said that he had taken the idea of Sherlock Holmes and made him a medical doctor, basically. It surrounded him with similar kind of people. And, Wilson Watson character wasn't much of a stretch. It's just he went from a general medical doctor who treated all kinds of ailments during the war and stuff to a oncologist.
Wow, really interesting. And I guess one other question popped up in my head about with regard to the Laurier King. What happens to Watson if he's married? Is he kind of out of the picture now, or are they still interacting?
Well, Watson himself got married at a few
Oh,
points,
okay.
and that's also noted in the original canon, as they call it, from Conan
Oh,
Doyle.
really? Oh.
Um, but it's mostly that series takes place after Holmes's adventures with Watson, and it's uh, like early 1900s, like World War One, going forward.
Hmm.
Uh, Same thing with the Irene Adler thing. That's late 1800s. So
Interesting.
the Irene Adler series, though, by Carol Nelson Douglas, it is more of like the other side of the scandal in Bohemia.
Hmm.
It's like, well, what happens if Irene Adler was herself a detective,
Hmm.
and she was going head to head with Sherlock Holmes?
Interesting.
Uh, Beekeeper's Apprentice is more of like a young girl who stumbles upon Sherlock Holmes in a meadow, and he was contemplating suicide, so he, yeah, because he's bored to death and stuff,
Really? Huh.
and so they strike up a friendship, and he mentors her, and then she goes away to university and has Professor Moriarty's daughter as one of her teachers for mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
And then after several mishaps, she continually gets brought into cases that Holmes is working on,
Mm.
and throughout the course of these books, and they eventually get married as part of it.
Wow. Really interesting. Hmm.
Yeah. But I should mention the order in which they're written doesn't also necessarily evolve orderly when you try to read them, because in some of
Oh,
them they're married, some of them they're not.
interesting.
Because the stories kind of jump
Oh,
timelines a little bit.
oh, but does she provide some sort of chronological guide at all?
Not really.
No, really?
She more says, this is the year that it took place, and then you figure out from
Oh.
that, based on
Ah,
when they say that they got married, where
it
the thing fits into the puzzle.
makes you do a little bit of investigation, huh?
Yeah, well, Conan Doyle had the same problem with his stuff, where the
Yeah,
timelines were jumbled,
interesting. Yeah. Hmm.
as pointed out in Moriarty and Sherlock Holmes.
Hmm. And you've read most, if not all, of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes?
I've read all of them. Yeah.
Wow.
I also read the book adaptations of the Rathbone and Bruce radio shows. I've read the book The Giant Rat of Sumatra, which is an expansion on one line in a Conan Doyle story. Uh, I have read the first two books of the Laurier King novels, and I've read all 8 of the Irene Adler series. I have read Laurier King, Sherlock Holmes, uh, the Mrs. Hudson's Case, Beekeeping for Beginners, and several other Holmes versus the Ripper things.
It's really impressive. With regard to the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle books, how long would you say that would take, your average reader to read? If they were to become interested in reading them.
Well, I'd say I'm an average reader because I don't certainly excel at speed reading.
Yeah.
So an average reader, some of them you could bang out in 20 minutes if you're a decent reader. If you're not so decent like me, I might get through one in an hour.
Wow.
Uh,
So at least a summer project, probably, right?
Minimally, yeah.
That's great. Well, especially in the heat we're experiencing these days,
Yeah.
not a bad idea to cuddle with a book.
Yeah, for the record, for the sake of everybody understanding this in future years, when we say heat, we're talking like 91, 95 degrees, 100 degrees in the sun with
Yeah.
no breeze.
And humidity sometimes.
Yeah.
For most of the time.
Yeah, well, that's mostly what drives it up to the hundreds.
Right.
It's been an impressive heat wave, but nothing again compared to what Vegas was having a couple of weeks ago, where it was in the 130 range.
Wow. How would you compare the two? Probably the most successful interpretations of Sherlock Holmes, in film, the Rathbone series and the Jeremy Brett. Would you agree with those are the two biggest?
Yeah,
No.
those are certainly the two most well known.
Right.
I would say that Brett played Holmes as very cut and dry with no nonsense. Rathbone and Bruce played Holmes and Watson with a knowing wink to each other, which made that stuff more fun.
Yeah.
The other thing that I should mention, because I wrote a paper comparing and contrasting the two that we just were talking about, Rathbone died of a heart attack in 1965, I believe it was. Or maybe 1967. Anyway, he died of a heart attack. And Jeremy Brett also died of a heart attack. It's Sir Edward Hardwicke, who was Jeremy Brett's Watson, was a distant cousin of Nigel Bruce, who was Rathbone's Watson. And Hardwicke's still alive. Bruce died of a heart attack in 1958.
Interesting. And interestingly, the Rathbone Bruce series are all black and white. Is that correct?
Yep. Unless they were colorized, which you can find on YouTube, colorized versions of Sherlock Holmes and Secret Weapon, Terror by Night, Dressed to Kill, and was it Terror by Night, Dressed to Kill, Sherlock Holmes and Secret Weapon, some other one I'm blanking on here. Women in Green, that's what it was. The Dress to Kill also goes under the title of a prelude to murder. And on the Blu-rays and DVDs of those, they say Sherlock Holmes and the Secret Weapon, Sherlock Holmes, and whatever, but it's Sherlock Holmes and the Spider Woman, Sherlock Holmes and the House of Fear. But the actual titles are like the House of Fear, the Spider Woman, the Scarlet Claw.
Is that just to remind the audience what they're watching?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah, in case you couldn't figure out that somebody says Holmes,
Which Holmes are we talking about?
Yeah, right?
Right. Let's see. You mentioned that some of them were actually comedies, right?
There were some comedies made,
Like Hound of the Baskervilles in 1978.
Yeah, with Peter Cook, Dudley Moore and Peter Cook.
Yeah. And there was one more I think I saw, or I remember, Without a Clue in 1988.
Yeah, and there was also The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother, which was 1975, Gene Wilder, Madeline Kahn, Marty Feldman, and Mel Brooks uncredited.
Interesting. And in the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle series, does Sherlock Holmes actually have a brother?
Yes, Mycroft.
Mycroft. Oh.
He is Holmes's smarter brother, according to Holmes.
Really interesting. If you were to recommend, someone who's Sherlock Holmes ignorant where to start, do you have any,
Start with the
suggestions?
novels.
Yeah,
Start with the novels,
the original
Count of the
ones.
Baskervilles, and then go through the 256 short stories. If you survive that and you enjoy it, then go to the Rathbone and Bruce stuff, and then if you enjoy that, go to the Jeremy Brett stuff, and then if you enjoy that, you're on your own because there's so much to choose from.
Yeah. And what would you think is probably one of the most interesting stories of Sherlock Holmes?
In terms of what exactly?
Maybe like entertainment, or how about the most difficult mystery to solve, or something like that?
The most difficult mystery to solve. Uh, to me, the most difficult mystery to solve was part of the radio shows. But the most entertaining to me, anyway, is the Holmes versus the Ripper stuff. But I can tell you right now, as far as that goes, there's one book I would love to plug right now for the worst book I've ever read. And that is called The Further Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, The Whitechapel Horrors. And it's part of, you'll see it on there, under the Sherlock Holmes vs. Jack the Ripper books. It is horrible. You read a paragraph and there's a footnote that's about a paragraph long at the bottom of the page. So you have to read it. It's like reading a friggin' textbook. But picture that with the ever-changing narrator, so it's not just like Watson's perspective or Holmes's perspective. It's the omniscient narrator on top of it. So
oh my gosh,
it's not consistent paragraph to paragraph as to who's narrating. And then sometimes it goes into a lot of detail. Other times he skims the surface of stuff. Other times he's being very technical about the science of murder. Other times he's being very technical about drinks or whatever. It just takes forever to get through. And it's like 600 pages.
Wow. How did that one get published?
Posthumously.
Oh.
The guy died, and his widow thought it was worth publishing her husband's book that he slaved over for years.
Wow.
That woman belongs in a home.
Sounds like he was a Sherlock Holmes fanatic in a way.
He was, but I mean...
If he goes so technical into everything.
Well, yeah, but he was also a big fan of the Ripper. So he had, citations for, where exactly in current-day London the murder sites were and stuff.
So it was like a research novel or something. Or like you said, a textbook. Huh.
Yeah, but it's a piece of shit.
No, I'm just curious about that. Like, do they study this book in schools at all?
No. Actually, the one that they study in schools, I found this out because of Amazon having a sale on it.
Yeah.
For textbook purposes. It's the last Sherlock Holmes story. Again, under Sherlock Holmes versus Jack the Ripper.
Okay.
Yeah. They also have, for textbook kind of Holmes stuff, you could look at the Nicholas Meyer stuff, which is the 7% Solution, which was also made into a movie. That's supposed to be a comedy as well as a mystery, which is interesting. Sherlock Holmes meets Sigmund Freud. And then that was followed by the West End Horror, I believe, if memory serves. And that was the Holmes versus the Ripper. And then it was the Canary Trainer, which is the same kind of story that was in the radio show of Rathbone and Bruce, but it was written in the 70s into book form before a different version came out in the late 90s in book form exclusively through Barnes & Noble's publishing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what about the dark beginnings of Sherlock Holmes, the 2003/2005?
Yeah. It's another take on the Holmes story, but it's basically casting Conan Doyle as the Dr. Watson to the real life professor that Conan Doyle had that it supposedly solved mysteries on his own.
Huh.
But really, it was something where, like, let's say, Conan Doyle had hard time writing a paper.
Yeah.
He'd go in to see this professor, and the professor would say to him something to the effect of, "See, you had a hard time with that assignment last night. Give it to me. I'll tell you what to do with it." And he'd go, "How the hell do you tell that?" "Well, you've got circles under your eyes. You've got ink on your cuff where you spill the ink, so forth and so on."
Interesting. Wow. Very good.
So that's the dark beginnings there in the mystery rooms. I should mention, let me say that list there. I think it would be good to note that Jeremy Brett's stuff, for those who haven't seen it, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, The Sign of Four, The Hound of the Baskervilles, The Return of Sherlock Holmes, The Casebook of Sherlock Holmes, The Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes, were and The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, were the Jeremy Brett stuff. What's his name there? Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law were in two Sherlock Holmes movies: Sherlock Holmes 2009 and Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows 2011. And they have Sherlock Holmes 3 currently listed as in development on imdb.com for those guys. Sherlock Holmes 1922 was William Powell's first surviving movie. He went on to play Philo Vance in the late 1920s and early 30s, and The Thin Man from 1934 to 1947. He played Nick Charles of The Thin Man, since The Thin Man technically refers to the title character who was murdered in the original film/book.
Yeah.
Sherlock Holmes versus Jack the Ripper in Dust and Shadow, Account of the Ripper Killings by Dr. John H. Watson. Study in Terror, which was also made into a movie. The Further Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, The Whitechapel Horrors, as I said. The West End Horror, The Last Sherlock Holmes Story. Whitechapel, The Final Stand of Sherlock Holmes. Quite a few others. Excuse me. The Irene Adler series that you've heard us mention by Carol Nelson Douglas consists of Goodnight, Mr. Holmes. Goodnight, Mr. Holmes. Good Morning, Irene, otherwise known as The Adventuress. Femme Fatale. Spider Dance. Chapel Noir. Castle Rouge. Irene's Last Waltz. Irene at Large. Another Scandal in Bohemia. Some of those are alternate titles, but you'd have to figure out which ones they are. And the Kindle novella for that series is The Private Wife of Sherlock Holmes. Laurie Arkin's Mary Russell series is The Beekeeper's Apprentice, A Monstrous Regimen of Women, A Letter of Mary, The Moor, O Jerusalem, the Justice Hall, the Game, the Locked Rooms, the Language of Bees, the God of the Hives, the Pirate King, Garment of Shadows, and the Art of Detection, which is a crossover novel with another book series that she did. Her Kindle books, as we said, are Mrs. Hudson's Case, Gloria Arkin, Sherlock Holmes, which is the textbook one, and Beekeeping for Beginners. And she contributed to a compilation of Sherlock Holmes stuff called A Study in Sherlock. Nicholas Meyer's stuff was the 7% Solution, as I said, which was also turned into a movie in 1976. The West End Horror, and The Canary Trainer. So, just afraid I mentioned that.
Yeah.
So if any of those sound appealing to people, just be forewarned, the descriptions of Holmes's drug habits are quite extensive in the 7% Solution, because the 7% Solution refers to the cocaine and heroin addiction that Holmes had.
Now, is that just restricted to that film?
No. It was also talked about in the Conan Doyle canon.
Interesting.
Which, ironically, Conan Doyle was never really much of a spiritualist, but he got into trying to contact the dead when his son died.
Huh.
And that's how he spent his remaining years. But over the course of time, he didn't really write much about it in the Holmes world, or any of his other books for that matter. However, it is interesting to note that Holmes files call his works the canon, and when you consider that that's what religious people refer to as the Bible.
I guess, like, for someone who's, somewhat ignorant about Holmes, I never would have imagined that he was addicted to some drug.
Oh, yeah. It was.
He just had this image, I don't know, maybe it's just me, clean-cut Holmes, really smart guy, a little witty, and I wouldn't have imagined that would come about through, some addiction.
Oh, yeah, no, he was addicted, but it was to keep his mind active because he got bored easily if he didn't have some puzzle in front of him.
So it was kind of a, I don't want to say, it's some kind of like mental disorder or something, like where he gets bored really easily and.
Kind of, but I think it was more written as like he was too smart for everybody else, and hence why he could get bored easily. If he got bored, then he'd resort to cocaine and heroin.
Yeah, and eventually suicidal thoughts, right? According to that one.
Yeah. The character of House also had an addiction to Vicodin.
Okay.
So that was also covered in that.
Interesting. That was enlightening for me.
Well, also, if you remember the end of Hound of the Baskervilles, spoilers, Rathbone said, the 1939 version, the movie, Rathbone says to Nigel Bruce something to the effect of, Watson, the needle. That was the sole reference to the drugs that Holmes took in that Rathbone and Bruce series.
Wow. That one slipped my mind. Interesting. And speaking of the Hound of the Baskervilles, would you say that one is the best?
By far, yes.
Yeah.
But in the Rathbone and Bruce films, if I may say that list again. Sorry, I probably should.
It's a lot to remember.
Yeah. It is. So the movies for Rathbone and Bruce were The Hound of the Baskervilles, 1939, which also starred the radio show of the New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, 1939. Those two were done at Fox, and then they switched to Universal for the remainder of the series. Now, I should mention that The Hound of the Baskervilles was the fourth film version of that. The 1939 one was the fourth film version of that. So the rest of the series at Universal consisted of Sherlock Holmes and the Voice of Terror, 1942, Sherlock Holmes and the Secret Weapon, 1942, Sherlock Holmes in Washington, 1943, Sherlock Holmes Faces Death, 1943, Crazy House, 1943. They had cameos as Holmes and Watson in there. The Spider-Woman, 1944, The Scarlet Claw, 1944, Pearl of Death, 1944, House of Fear, 1945, The Woman in Green, 1945, Pursuit to Algiers, 1945, Terror by Night, 1946, and Dressed to Kill, aka A Prelude to Murder, 1946.
Wow, so they average anywhere from 2 to 3 movies
a
year? Wow.
Yeah, and you can do it even better that they were banged out in a month.
That's impressive. And they're about an hour and a half each, right?
Some of them are about an hour. Other ones go an hour and a half, hour 40 minutes.
That's really impressive.
Yeah.
And they're so captivating, too.
Yeah, even after all this time, they haven't lost their sparkle. Now, I should mention my favorites off of that list for good mystery and atmosphere and stuff. Hound of the Baskervilles, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, Sherlock Holmes Faces Death, The Spider-Woman, The Scarlet Claw, The Pearl of Death, The House of Fear are the best ones in the series, as far as the mystery and atmosphere goes.
Very cool.
I thought it might be worth mentioning that. I'm going to turn the tables on you for a minute.
Oh, okay.
Let me ask you, from what little you know of Holmes,
very little.
Are you getting tempted at all to go back and read any of the books?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, especially after watching the Rathbone and Nigel Bruce series. If the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle stories are anything like the nature of those films, I'm sure to enjoy them thoroughly.
Yeah, well, here's the best news.
And I'm not a person to read into like a lot of mysteries and investigating stories and stuff like that, but
unlike me, yeah. Go ahead.
But there's something just captivating about the persona of Holmes and his relationship with Watson and stuff too.
Yeah,
they're like a power team together.
Yeah, well, Billy Wilder hated the Sherlock Holmes genre, and that's why he wrote and directed The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes in the 70s, and he gave them a homosexual relationship as part of that. So he had a pretty good dig at them for it. That aside, most of the Rathbone and Bruce stuff was based on Holmes' short stories and stuff. So you could probably figure that out. Like, The House of Fear was The Five Orange Pips. Stuff like that. The thing that you have to be careful of, though, is that it's tempting to try to figure out where exactly every story fit in a chronological order, because you want to kind of do that with your mind.
Right.
Don't try to do that. Just try to enjoy the stories and novels for what they are.
Individually?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just view it as a collected series of writings from a guy who approximated when something happened, not as this definitively happened in this year, because if you try to say definitively when something happened, then it raises problems in the order.
And it's constraining too as an author, I'm sure, right?
Kinda, yeah. And I say that as a writer of sorts.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think I'm gonna try to read them. Maybe a little bit this year, but definitely next year.
Well, do you want me to give you the best news?
Sure.
You have a Kindle, right?
Yeah.
They're free.
Wow.
They're in public domain.
That helps a lot.
Yeah, so...
but I think, if you want to get a hard copy, I think even Barnes & Noble's has the complete collection in like a beautiful leatherback.
Yeah, but if you want to spend like $100 on
Is it $100? I thought it was $20.
No. No, the hardback for the home stuff is like $100.
I'm pretty sure I bought my father one, but maybe that was a long time ago.
No, it was like it's $100 for the current hardcover edition that you really like. But if you want a pretty good decent set, you can drop $20 and get the paperback box set, which has all of them compressed into 2 books.
Very cool.
And that comes out through Barnes & Noble's press, or you can find it online for a little bit less sometimes.
I mean, Kindle's nice and on, and it's great that it's free. Hopefully we'll have a lot more Sherlock Holmes readers in the future. But it is nice to hold a book in your hands, and it kind of, I don't know, I would think it would help with the imagination and stuff like that too, as you read it. Because you're kind of...
I don't think that the weight of a book in your hand changes what's going on in your head. I mean, it didn't for me when I was reading the L'Oreal King Kindle stuff. Maybe that's just me, I don't know.
Well, I think one thing you haven't talked about much is the Cumberbatch series that you mentioned. Sherlock has 2 seasons currently out, right?
Yeah.
They're working on a 3rd?
Yep.
Am I right on that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've got, what's his name there?
The guy who plays
Stephen
the Hobbit?
Fry.
Yeah.
He played Mycroft in the Game of Shadows. Guy Ritchie, Robert Downey Jr., Sherlock Holmes. He played Mycroft in there, and he plays Mycroft on the show now. By the way, he also attempted suicide last year. Point of interest. And that announcement was made the same day that it was announced that Paris Jackson, who was in a 5150 in California, psych hold for cutting her wrist with a meat cleaver.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That freaks me out a little bit.
Yeah. So anyway, disturbing thoughts aside. The Holmes versus the Ripper stuff's kind of fun, though, if you like the Jack the Ripper story.
Yeah.
Jack the Ripper is real. I know I just blew about 1,000 minds right there. No, I say that because there were some idiots on Twitter that didn't know that Titanic really happened.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean...
Somebody's failing in history class.
Yeah, right? No, they don't even teach you about the Titanic in history class.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Like, when we were in school, they told us about it because there was that damn movie that came out.
Right.
But now, where there's no real Titanic movie that comes out, except for a POS TV miniseries that nobody watches, they don't.
Is it a miniseries? Oh, you mean the real investigatory one, where they actually dive down into the remains and stuff?
Well, there was that, but I mean, there's a miniseries of like the Titanic broken up over 5 episodes, kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, those History Channel movies, kind of things. They stink. They stink. nothing compared to James Cameron's works.
Mm.
But anyway, that because they don't really have anything like that anymore, the James Cameron thing, it's not really a necessity to teach it. I mean, you know, it, the state of education just gets worse, in my opinion. I say that because, as I've said, I've read the Holmes canon, as it's called, the Conan Doyle works, and I've mentioned all these other things that I've read, all these Sherlock Holmes versus Jack the Ripper stuff, and the Nicholas Meyer, and so forth and so on. The kids I went to college with never read Sherlock Holmes. They knew who he was, but they never read it. And, the theory of the people that I went to college with was I don't have to pick up a book. I know everything that I need to know.
Gosh.
So they would go in, and some of them would pass it and then go, oh, haha, I guess I got lucky. No shit. And other people would go out, party all night, get drunk, make out with another woman or guy or something, then go into class the next day and fail a test and go, I don't understand what happened. I studied.
Oh my
God. When you had your nose in the booze bottle?
Yeah. Not studying the right subject matter there.
You're right. So, I mean, the state of academics is pretty sad. But that aside, I strongly recommend people read Sherlock Holmes. And if you find that you like Sherlock Holmes, take a good serious look at the Irene Adler series, which, by the way, is out of print now. But also look at the Mary Russell series by Laurie Arking. And the Nicholas Meyer stuff is good, and anything of Holmes versus the Ripper, with the exception of the Further Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, the Whitechapel Horrors, is good.
Yeah. Now, aren't there video games too?
Yes. There's Sherlock Holmes versus Jack the Ripper computer game. There's several Sherlock Holmes computer games. There's a PS3 Sherlock Holmes video game, which you and I will be playing tomorrow night. And there are a few Jack the Ripper computer games as well.
So,
it
multiple forms of entertainment.
Yeah, and it's all relatively easily priced too. At that, you can catch the video game on sale, the PS3 Sherlock Holmes game, for $20 sometimes. That's how I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was on sale for $20. I was like, bingo.
Now we'll see how they compare to the stories, huh?
Yeah.
Don't expect too much, right?
Plus, it's a different thing when it's interactive shit.
Yeah, that's true.
Click this button, make Holmes walk over here to talk to this dumb character in this little video clip that's going to take up the majority of the time that you're playing the game. Oh, and when you're done with that, make Holmes walk over here and click on this other thing. It's going to make a long video happen.
Well, hopefully we don't have to sit through his wedding ceremony, right?
Yeah, I think yours is going to be painful enough.
Nice. Ouch. See if I ask you any more questions about Sherlock now.
Yeah, by the way, how do you make a fruit cordial?
How?
Be nice to him. Speaking of which, how's your brother doing?
You're right. No comment there.
Yeah.
He's probably standing outside the other door.
Yeah, you just heard that joke. I don't know, did you want to touch on Christopher Lee as Sherlock Holmes versus the Rothbard and Bruce or anything? Did you have any of those kind of questions?
Yeah, let's do that one.
Okay.
Because I missed that one.
Okay, well, Christopher Lee had a big booming voice, as you know, from the Lord of the Rings
Right.
series. He played Holmes very quietly and deliberately. Um, as a very intellectual, soft-spoken gentleman, whereas Rathbone was always, "Oh, cut that out, Watson,"
Mm.
kind of Jack Benny thing.
Yeah.
But if you go to, Jeremy Brett, again, he's very cut and dry and no nonsense.
Mm.
Uh,
And I was going to say, interestingly, in the Rathbone, I noticed that Watson was a little bit more playful, if you will. What was that episode where he goes to the bar, or that movie? I can't remember. And he's pretty plastered, and Sherlock solves the whole mystery. He solves the mystery in his absence. It's really funny.
Yeah, allegedly.
Yeah.
He had solved it. Yeah, that was the Scarlet Claw.
That's right. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a good one, folks. I like that one a lot.
Yeah, I mentioned that as one of being the best mysteries.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was fun. It, Nigel Bruce made Holmes or Watson rather, being a little bit of a blunderer.
Yeah.
But it was endearing and in the most enduring characterization of that character.
Yeah.
I mean, I have not heard somebody speak as warmly about the Watson in the Peter Cushing or Christopher Lee Holmes movies as I have, or the Jeremy Brett for that matter, as I have Nigel Bruce as Dr. Watson.
Mm.
Now, the whole premise, speaking of the Nigel Bruce, Dr. Watson, the whole premise of the radio show, The New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, was that Dr. Watson retired and moved to Southern California to live out his last few years, and he was giving an interview to Harry Bartell or some of the other spokespeople. He would tell the stories that way, and then the dramatization was done by Rathbone and Bruce as well. And that inspired a script that I wrote, but I'm not going to talk about that because I don't want somebody to steal it.
Oh.
Any questions, contact me.
They won't be answered.
Right. Just contact me, that's all.
Oh.
I'm kidding. So, I think we've said probably everything that there is to say about Holmes and Watson, unless you can think of something else quickly off the top of your head. No. You're good?
I'm scratching my head. I'm okay.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think hard.
Use a drink.
Yeah, probably.
Well, listen.
Why don't you go get me one, Sherlock?
Careful, Watson. We could always go into some of your brilliant moments on this thing.
I'd rather not.
That's what she said. Anyway, with that, I guess that will have to do it for this Sherlock Holmes podcast of the Moviecase series. I strongly suggest that anything that I've taught favorably about studying terror, Murder by Decree for Holmes vs. the Ripper movies, any of the Holmes vs. the Ripper books, Studying Terror, Dust and Shadow, The Last Sherlock Holmes Story, The Whitechapel, The Final Stand of Sherlock Holmes, The West End Horror, or any of the Conan Doyle stuff, any of the stuff from the Irene Adler series by Carol Nelson Douglas, or the Mary Russell series by Laurie R. King. People should look up, read, and or watch. And by all means, watch the Rathbone and Bruce movies. Those are great, and the Jeremy Bretts, and listen to the Rathbone and Bruce radio show. You'll find that it's kind of intellectually stimulating to make you kind of picture everything in your head as opposed to having to have everything spelled out in front of you on a TV screen.
Right. And that's something more of our generation could use these days.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I have a lot of examples for that, but not enough time to tell it in. So with that, I'm Nate Taves.
And Thomas Sawyer.
And thank you for listening, and please tune into the next one ASAP.